Hello, I'm Frost, and welcome to this episode where I'm going to be covering beginner tips for the Outer Worlds. So, tip number one is play your way. Obsidian have done a great job with the Outer Worlds in that it is an RPG where you can actually play in the style that you want to play. So don't feel that you have to go down a particular route if you like to sort of lie and sneak around, or you prefer to be coming in guns blazing. You pick the way you want to play and you continue down that route, as the Outer Worlds will support that and will let you play the way you want to. Number two, there is a but though. And the but is that there are some skills that you will need to train up because you can't actually substitute them. So if I actually go into my character, here we go, and we go into the skills, the areas that you do want to pay attention to are stealth and tech. Okay, now tech is going to be important, first of all for the inhaler. With the inhaler, which is normally if you're on a PC, you press the key F, you get that sound and you basically get a boost to your health, and you can get some other bonuses as well because you can add extra slots for your inhaler for added bonuses. But then also under science, you get the tinker. Now the tinker I'm going to come on to in a little while, but this is really, really important. You get it to at least 20 so you get this tinker ability. And then engineering, you want to get to 20 as early as you can as well because you want field repair. And that's something else I'm going to be covering. So tech is like kind of really important to at least get to level 20 on all three skills. And then on stealth, the one that you really need is lockpick. Now lockpick you need to train up quite high because you will come up against loot boxes and doors where you need a certain skill base in order to be able to make use of the lockpick. And so therefore this is something that you have to skill up, and you can't substitute it by shooting the box or lying to the box or persuading the box. You need the lockpick skill. All right, so so those two kind of groupings, you are going to have to train those up to at least a sort of a decent level, especially the lockpick. Tip number three is to do with stats. Now there's two things that we need to check out. The first one is if you go into your settings and you go to the UI, which is right at the very end, where it says show base item stats, you want this unchecked. It is checked by default. And the reason why you want it unchecked is so that way the actual stats, your weapons, etc., will reflect your skills of your character. If you don't have it, if you have it checked, then it will not show that, which seems a very strange thing to have set by default. So please make sure you have it unchecked. The next thing is if we actually go into our inventory and, for example, we check my weapon, it's actually showing 131 DPS, but it's actually showing it based on how much ammo I have in my weapon at the time. So if I pull out that weapon, you can see I've only got 4 ammo in there. So if I do a reload, and reload back up to 36, and then I go back into my stats again, you can now see that I have 262 DPS, which is a very, very different figure. So do make sure that when you're checking these stats that you have your weapon fully loaded. Tip number 4 is to look after your weapons and your armor. Now if I select my handgun, you can see that down the bottom here I have like a little gun symbol, and normally to the right of it there'll also be an armor symbol. So when when the health of your weapon gets below 70, this little icon will pop up, and you'll want to get this fixed as soon as you can. If it gets to red, then your weapon is essentially useless and doing virtually no damage. So you want to look after your weapons and armor. Okay, now the way you can do it is if you trained up that skill which I mentioned before, which is the field repair, then you can just do hold R or whatever the button is for your Xbox or your console, and then just make sure that you just repair it. And then you'll need weapon parts and armor parts depending on which one is damaged. So we can accept that. So keep an eye on that, and always make sure that you keep your armor and your weapons in tip-top condition, and that's why you're always going to have to loot as many boxes as you can because you want those weapon parts. Tip number 5 is do not steal unless you're absolutely sure you can get away with it or you have good dialogue skills. And the reason why I say this, and this is very much an early game thing, once you get further into the game, then be my guest, steal as much as you want. But the reason why you don't want to steal early game is if you get caught and you can't talk your way out of it, then your faction, your status with the faction will reduce. it could actually get to the point where they shoot at you. And if your companions are set to aggressive, which is something I'll cover in a minute, then they'll start shooting back, and then you will be in a position where you can't recover your status with that faction in early game. And what it will mean is that a lot of the quests, the side quests, will be locked out for you. So I highly recommend, if you want to enjoy the game to its fullest, that you do not steal in early game. You don't need to, there's plenty of other stuff around. So trust me, you'll find what you need. Tip number 6 is break down your duplicates. Carrying capacity is always going to be an issue. You're never going to have enough space to carry all the stuff with you. And I highly recommend, if you've got any duplicates, that you break them down for weapons parts, especially if they're things that you know that you're never going to use. So for example, the trek blade, the sentry saber, which are really, really low on DPS, just break them down, get the weapon parts, and then that way you can make sure that you free up plenty of space to find more good loot, and then that keeps your carrying capacity down as well. Tip number 7 is make sure you tinker. And so the way you tinker is you find yourself a workbench. Now there's one on your ship, but there's also, they're dotted around all over the place. So there's one right in front of me here. So if we go up and use the workbench, okay, what you can do is you can tinker your weapon and your armor to improve their stats. So for example, if I go to tinker here and I pick my auto mag pistol, you can see that at the moment it does damage of 20, and if I tinker, I can, for the cost of 65 bits, I can then pick it up to 22. And you can tinker up to 5 levels above the level that you're at. Now, so if I do that tinker, there we go, so we accept that. You can see now that I can continue going. I can go from 22 to 24, but now it's 137 bits. So I'm going to do it again. There we go, and I can get 24 to 26, but the price of the tinker has now gone up. So it's an exponential growth. I generally recommend, especially early game, that you only tinker to about 3 levels. Otherwise it starts getting extortionate, you'll use all your bits and you may need those later on. So we'll do one more level. So there you go, so with 3 tinkers we've gone from 20 to 26, which takes my overall DPS up to 110. So make sure you tinker, and not just for your guns, but also for your armor as well. Tip number 8 is be aware that mods do not change your ammo type. So when you modify a unit, so for example I could take an assault rifle here, which does basic kinetic damage. So I'm going to do a modify on that and install a mod. Now the mod that I'm looking for, here we go, it turns it into a shock gun. So you can see that now I will do shock damage instead of standard kinetic damage. Now the thing is that normally it uses heavy ammo. Now you would think that with a shock weapon that it would use energy just like a standard shock weapon that you pick up. But actually, if I install the mod and do yes, there we go, and go back, if you actually look, the magazine, the weapon, the ammo type is still heavy. So be aware that if you change the type of damage that the weapon does, it does not change the ammo type. And this can be very, very important, because if you change, let's say, all your assault rifles to do all different types of damage, they will still all use heavy ammo. So please be aware of this. Tip number 9 is keep a collection of helmets and shirts. And the reason why you want to do this is because helmets only have a weight of 1.0, and a lot of the shirts also only have a weight of 1.0. And what it allows you to do is to boost your skills on the fly. So for example, if I needed to pick a lock, then I make sure I have my helmet that is my lockpick helmet, and then I will also have tech skills, and I can pop that on as well, and that boosts up my ability to pick a lock. So you may find, especially early game, you don't have quite enough skills to be able to open a door, you don't have enough lockpick skills. What you do is you grab the helmet, you grab the shirt that you need, stick them on, give yourself a bonus, and that may be just enough to take you over the edge. And obviously with the shirts and the helmets, because they're only 1.0 in weight, you can carry a fair few around with you, and it's a great way to boost your stats on the fly. Tip number 10 is look after your companions. And the way you look after your companions is make sure you hand-me-downs. Okay, so especially if you've got weapons that you've modded and you've tinkered with and so forth, then once you actually upgrade to a sort of better weapon, then take that weapon and make sure you give it to your companion, so that your companion can do more damage and is better protected. And so that goes, like I said, for weapons and for armor. And you should try and do this throughout the game. So always remember, when you upgraded your weapons, make sure you pass them down to your companions. The other thing with your companions as well that you should be aware of is that if their mode is aggressive, then if you misclick and start shooting somebody, you will have havoc. So I highly recommend that when you're in populated areas, pop them into defensive, and then they are not going to run riot and cause more problems for you than you created by accident in the first place. And then once you're out and about and you know you're going into a mission potentially with combat, then you can pop them back to aggressive. Just a recommendation, because I've done it myself and ended up with very, very bad status with factions because I was a little bit too trigger happy by accident. Tip number 10 is that throughout the game, and I've played all the way to the end, you will always have issues with how much stuff you can carry around with you. It's one of those things with RPGs, you always end up picking up way too much stuff and you don't know what to get rid of. And so please make sure that you make best use of the carrying capacity perk whenever you can. So obviously make sure you've got your base health and your armor and all that kind of stuff done, but then after that do consider using carrying capacity as a perk that you want. And also if you can give that to your companions, that's great. Also be aware that in your inventory, in your armor, that one of the mods for the armor is also a backpack, which allows you to carry more stuff around as well. So there you go, carrying capacity is important and always will be throughout the game. And my final tip for you, which is still related to carrying capacity, is that if there's a lot of stuff that you really don't want to get rid of, don't panic. Once you've actually got the power module for your ship, and this isn't really a spoiler, but once you've got the power module for your ship that you're going to need to be able to get it off the ground, then behind this door, and I'm not going to tell you what's inside, but behind this door there is a chest where you can stuff your stuff and not lose it, and you don't have to carry it around with you. So it's literally only on the first planet until you get your ship off the ground that you have to carry everything around with you. After that, there will be a place where you can stash everything. All right, okay, well I hope you found that useful. If you like my videos, then please give me a like. If you didn't like it, then just let me know why. Give me a dislike. Please subscribe, and if you like what I do and you want to be notified, then hit the bell icon because I do release on a regular basis, and it's always about sci-fi gaming. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and see you soon. Bye.